Okay, now I know what opinions to say. Hey everyone, Magic Sword here. So today they announced 20.8.2, which is a small balance tweak, just 3 card nerfs. But they are some big nerfs. If you are new here, you'll be glad to know that I am also anti-priest. If you're not new here, well, look at this. Look at this. So Apotheosis change down from +2/+3 and lifesteal to +1/+2. A lot of people were predicting it would be +1/+3, keep that body sticky. As long as you reduce the attack, you reduce the Samuro combo. Kind of doesn't matter if it sticks around for an extra hit or two. This is a pretty hard nerf, and a much needed one. So let's go ahead and read the dev comments here. They gave a very good explanation that is basically in line with what I thought the problems were with this card. So we're doing 2 priest changes, targeting the burst healing available in the class and their generation capabilities. Let's start with Apotheosis. We are moving the buff down to +1/+2 to hit the card's general power and combo capabilities. While healing has always been a strength of Priest, we want to reduce the urgency felt when dealing with Priest's minions. Currently, it can feel like you must remove every Priest minion because of the threat Apotheosis poses, and as we know, that is the territory of Paladin. We can't be mixing those class identities. A slight reduction in the buff here would lessen that urgency and make the minions post-Apotheosis easier to deal with. The other side of this nerf is Samuro Apotheosis combo, which, if I'm being honest, I felt like was the bigger sort of unfair thing with Apotheosis. Um, it's just like, okay, I'm playing aggro, and there's no coming back because they just restored themselves to full on like 7 mana, right? It was like, all right, it was my last turn to try to shut out the game, and they just won. So it's a little unfair that they had this really powerful, really easy to execute combo that was just kind of on demand like that, right? So that I'm glad they had that in mind. I'm glad they were aware of that. We all knew they were, right? But the punishment for playing minions into this combo is too much at the moment, so we'd like to keep some of that tension of resource commitment. We don't want the punishment to be a full heal of the opponent. The reduction in attack here helps get that combo into a healthier push-pull state. And I agree entirely. I think that Apotheosis coming down with that attack there is huge. Obviously they're not making it like a 0 attack. That would delete the card, right? I think having that having Samuro is more important to me than Apotheosis, right? Because he's a neutral legendary. He's a big deal. The card it was given to everyone, right? That Diamond Samuro, right? So like nerfing Samuro is a little bit of a strange thing to do. So I think adjusting Apotheosis around it is better. Plus, I mean, really, like Samuro has such a cool effect. And the fact that Apotheosis happens to break that is just an unfortunate side effect, right? So if Priest wants to heal for like 20 again, they're gonna have to probably commit more buffs to the monsters that they play. That's fine, honestly. Um, I think generally, like, and again that point about every minion's a threat. It's like, yeah, there's almost no counterplay to Priest because if you kill their minions, they res them, and if you don't kill them, they get buffed, right? If their Sethic Veil Weaver isn't getting buffed, it's generating stuff. If it isn't generating stuff because you killed it, it's getting resummoned, right? There is not too much to do. It was a bit of a catch-22 in a lot of Priest games, and I think that this puts Priest. Unfortunately, it does nerf its power level. I don't, in all seriousness, I don't hate Priest. I kind of like the idea of a control class that gets there by healing a lot compared to Warrior, who tends to be a control class that gets there by armoring up, right? Slight differences there, and their mechanics lean into that. I think that Priest was just way too good at that one thing with that combo. And I think this nerf brings Priest down to a healthier position, and then we get to see what Priest gets next expansion, right? So I think they waited to do this nerf because this has basically been a problem since Samuro came out. I think they waited to do this nerf till close to Stormwind launch so that Priest was not unplayable for 4 months, right? I think this is timed very intentionally. I think that that we will expect to see Priest pivot a bit in the upcoming expansion, and I look forward to that. I really do. I think that Priest. It's like I don't hate Priest because it's Priest. I hate Priest because of what it does, right? So if it stops doing those things, I'll like Priest, you know. So hopefully this is the sign that that Priest will stop doing those things along with Renew here, which is the other thing that Priest does that everyone hates, which is discover cards constantly, right? You hear it if you go on the Hearthstone subreddit or on Twitter. You will find within like a minute of searching a comment that says that I want to lose to someone who plays their own cards, or I hate Priest's class identity being discover, right? So this nerf to Renew, I would like to say I think Apotheosis is still viable. That Apotheosis Samuro card combo is strong still. It's just not game winning, which I think is a very good place for a 2-card mid game combo to be. You do not want to just shut down the game because you happen to generate an Apotheosis and you held on to your legendary from early, right? Like, it should not shut down the game. It should help you come back. It should be one of the first steps towards stabilization, but it shouldn't win you the game. And I think that's the state it's in right now, and that's good. Renew, it's a bit harder to say if it's still good. Going up to 2 mana, that's twice as much mana. Mana nerfs really hit early game cards harder than late game cards. That's nothing new. So let's just read what they said again real quick. So heading into this patch, we wanted to knock some of Priest generation potential, as one of our main goals in Hearthstone is to have the cards you chose to include in your deck matter. Hey, where did we hear that before? We decided to change Renew specifically because we believe this change makes the largest impact towards curbing the chain of generation in Priest. I believe they are channeling Frederick Douglass there, talking about the chains of generation. So at 2 mana, Renew has to be thoughtful inclusion during deck building, won't be generated by Wandmaker, and takes another mana reduction to get to 0. Yeah, so this is an indirect nerf to Palm Reader, an indirect nerf to Wandmaker, right? I can't even think of what other 1 mana spells Priest has. So that probably indicates something about Renew, right? This is again, puts Priest in a much healthier, albeit at this point, weak spot. But I think that Stormwind will give Priest a lot of tools, and we'll see a nice control Priest that has some counterplay to it, hopefully. I'm really looking forward to, I like their mount. I'm sure their little craftsman's tool will be very cool. Something about healing, I'm sure. I hope it's not spell generation. That would be a real kick in the teeth, right? But anyway. So while Priest Identity looks different in future expansions, we wanted to take this opportunity to rein in their card generation to build a better Magic experience for both players. Okay. Sorry, just as an aside, I bet their tool has something to do with like shadow spells or something, right? Because they seem to be pivoting into that with the new legendary. Just a thought. Also, this we're going to talk about this a bit more because Priest is ever present in my mind, living rent free. Anduin, never homeless, always in my head. So these nerfs to holy spells make the prospect of that new Priest legendary, the Benedictus, much better in my mind, because there was a clear gap with 1 mana Renew and old Apotheosis, that there was this clear gap between shadow spells and holy spells and Priest. This muddies the waters enough that even without seeing the new expansion, I think that the shadow cards are strong enough to support that archetype as at least a tier 3 deck. Because again, those shadow spells are surprisingly good. I mean, that generation spell that I mentioned earlier, that the one that reduced the cost of cards in your hand, that is huge, and that's a shadow spell. Devouring Plague, shadow spell. Shadow Word, Pain, or Death, whichever one's Death is in right now, right? Those are big. Those are big. Did I say big? Spells, right? Very powerful. They can support the archetype. Holy spells getting nerfed. Very key holy spells getting nerfed, I think, is going to be important to Priest kind of balancing out here. And I would like to say that palm reading is not as bad with Renew. I did see some other takes. I believe most of them were in the vein of, okay, these are what I predicted. This is fine. I did see Zeddy saying that, like, no, this isn't the real problem with priests. The real problem with priest is palm reading. It's raise dead, right? And I don't disagree that those cards are separately problems. I do think that a nerf to Renew and a nerf to Apotheosis do rein in palm reading quite a bit, because just the idea, like, I'm not getting a free Renew, another Discover, right? Because the idea was like, okay, I'm going to reduce all the cost of cards in my hand, and then I'm going to mulligan my Discover, right? Because I got Renew, and I'm going to heal a little bit. Apotheosis, and it's like, okay, there's my fourth Apotheosis. Time to shut out this game for good. It's like, well, that's not really happening anymore. Those were two of the strongest cards to generate off of palm reading, and I think that these nerfs go a long way to weakening palm reading as well. Raised Dead, of course, is still strong, but when it's not also backed by these other ridiculous things, that's fine. Raised Dead, strong cards are not a problem in a vacuum. They're a problem when they interact with other strong cards, right? So that's the only kind of contradictory take I saw. Not contradictory, not like he is contradicting himself, but um, the only take that seemed to be counter to what everyone else was saying that I saw. Um, so that I feel like palm reading's been reined in a little bit here too. So priest in general, like I said, okay, wrap it up real quick. Wrap it up. Priest worse now. Hopefully better in Stormwind. I think that we can all tolerate priest for another few weeks, um, especially now that it's down. I think it's kind of probably out of competitive with this. Unfortunately, it's probably reduced to like a tier 3 deck now with these nerfs, or a low tier 2. Whereas, in top level play, it is high tier 2. It's a very high skilled deck. I respect that. But these were some kind of BS things that needed to be hit. So, next expansion, I look forward to seeing what Priest has for us, because I anticipate Shadow Priest, and I might be able to get behind that. Gibberling. Gibberling is the other nerf here, right? So, I did actually watch that Regis video. That was a bit, of course, but I did actually watch it, and he mentioned, I can't believe Lightning Bloom is not getting nerfed here. I can't believe Gibberling's getting the hit instead. I'm like, I don't know how you would nerf Lightning Bloom without just totally neutering the card. Um, 1 mana overload 1, still generate 2, refresh 2, or change it to refresh instead of generate, right? So that way you can't like give yourself excess mana. Um, but I feel like he described it as like these other cards. He said Guardian Animals and Gibberling have now died for Lightning Bloom's sins, and I kind of get it. I don't fully agree with it. I think this nerf to Gibberling is also healthy, um, right? Because the deck, Gibberling was the highest. I'm gonna check that later. I'll edit it if it's not true. But Gibberling is the highest win rate card in Spell Druid, or Zoo Druid, whatever you want to call it. However, um, the sort of like baby combos that you do, this is basically like a baby combo deck, right? You either play Gibberling on like turn 1 or 2, and then like coin Lightning Bloom, Power of the Wild, right? Um, or you wait until turn 5 to play the Swarm, and you get a bunch of 2/2s, and then you try to buff them, especially if you're playing like Priest or something, right? Um, but this nerf to Gibberling, again, as they put it, I agree. I think they set out a goal and they achieved it very effectively with this nerf. They said Gibberling is the cause of many non-games. Matches that are heavily lopsided in the early game can have their outcome decided far too early. When to lower the frequency of this occurrence, Gibberling at 2 mana should result in many more games where opponents can respond to an early board of this little menace. So yeah, a lot of people's board clear doesn't come online for a couple more turns, right? And by the time it does come online, it's not proportionately strong enough to deal with the buffed up Gibberlings, right? So what will happen is you'll play Gibberling on 2, and you'll have that 1 flex mana, and you'll be able to do a bunch of crap. And usually that involves buffing up the Gibberlings, right? So, okay, So in your opponent's mind, they're like, okay, now they're out of range of my 2 mana deal 1 to everything board clear. So I'll just have to wait until I have enough mana for my deal 2 to everything. But by then you've buffed up the Gibberlings again because you have the mana for it. And then again and again and again, and you're always just out of reach of their board clear. This effectively prevents that from happening as often because functionally you have to figure this delays the combo a turn at least. Possibly more depending on how important that little bit of flex mana can be, right? Think about like with the nature studies or something. Sometimes this can have like a cascading effect where just 1 mana doesn't just delay it by 1, it delays it by a few because of how mana reduction versus innervate versus lightning bloom would work, or coin, right? So this is probably again a healthy nerf. This card is probably still tier 2. This deck, I mean, is still tier 2. Like I said, your Swarm is still powerful. Your Arbor Up is still powerful. I personally would probably still play Spell Druid at this point. So let's talk quickly about game improvements and bug fixes. This is not too major. So Kurtrus Ashfallen, this is just a visual fix. There's no functional change. They just clarify the wording on his hero power. Archdruid Hamul, haven't had a chance to play with it. I've literally not gotten it yet. I just have not seen it. Real weird coincidence. But apparently it had an issue where you could be offered minion types that are not in the pool if you were playing a menagerie board. That's a pretty nutty oversight. I really like the idea of somebody just like getting a faux reaper when they're not supposed to, and all their opponents are like, what the hell happened there, right? Or like a Charlga or something, right? Usually you just start generating blood gems. But yeah, that's been fixed if you encountered that and you were like, I can't believe I lost to that BS. And well, now you don't have to anymore. They adjusted the Darkmoon prizes. So I actually haven't even played a game with Darkmoon prizes. This is partly because I haven't played too much Battlegrounds lately since these have been introduced. But there is now rubber banding in Battlegrounds. That's right. So this is sort of a staple of the auto battler. I remember I came from TFT and played Battlegrounds. And I remember when I joined Battlegrounds, I was like, there's no rubber banding mechanic. That's weird. But now having played Battlegrounds for a year or so, when they introduced this idea, I was like, they're adding rubber banding to Battlegrounds? I was outraged, I tell you. So, this is a very normal thing for this genre. It's kind of strange in a competitive game to have rubber banding. That's a little weird. I don't know. It's acceptable. There's some strategy to it, right? Just like in TFT, where you can sort of lose early to maintain your loss streak. In Battlegrounds, you can potentially be greedy early, get those early tier ups to maintain your loss streak and get those prizes. So I think this will, even if it's not an optimal strategy, people will be drawn to it. So note that. I believe this will encourage greedier play in Darkmoon prize games versus non-prize games. That's my prediction. We will see greater picking of heroes who are greedy and just generally people tiering up more aggressively, right? That is my prediction for Battlegrounds there, and that is everything in the patch notes. Now you might have been thinking, wow, there were 3 nerfs and there was one like Battlegrounds update. This will be a short video. Well, evidently you were wrong 20 minutes later, but it's only because I can talk so much about Priest. So if you want to talk more about Priest, go ahead and leave a comment below. If you want to hear me talk about Priest, go ahead and sub, because we are getting into reveal season in less than a week. So that's going to be great. I didn't mention it before. This patch drops tomorrow. So go ahead and get those last games in before the month is over, before the patch drops toward the end of the month, I mean. And I'll see you next time. All right.